I'm Lexi Neely, Programs Assistant at Little Free Library.
And I'm Shelby King, Director of Programs.
And you're watching Little Free Library Unbound, a digital events series bringing together Little Free Library stewards, patrons, and supporters to discuss books, literacy, stewardship, and more.
In just a second, we'll be joined by some of our favorite book-loving, community-building, all-around fantastic friends. So we invite you to fill up that cup of coffee and get settled in. We hope you enjoy this conversation.
Thanks again, everyone, for being here with us tonight as we kick off with a few technical snags. We're really happy to be here with you to kick off Little Free Library Unbound. We have some great guests for you today. But before we talk about us, I want to talk a little bit about you and see who's here with us today. So we are going to run a quick survey. Maybe we might have another technical snag. We'll skip that for now. And how about instead, in the chat, if you would say which describes you best. Are you a Little Free Library steward who has a library of your own? Are you a supporter of the Little Free Library organization, or are you someone who uses Little Free Libraries frequently? If all of the above are true, go ahead and add that. Looks like we have a lot of stewards here today. That's awesome. And a lot who are all of the above as well. Very cool. Awesome. So we are excited to be here with you to launch Little Free Library Unbound with our first chapter, Introducing Reading Color. Leading our discussion will be our National Board Chair, Anita Merina, formerly of the National Education Association. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you, Lexi. I'm so thrilled to be here. And this is about a program. Can you guys see me? This is about a program that is really, truly near and dear to my heart. As a child, a teen, and adult, I rarely saw myself in the pages of the book. Either I read in the library or I picked up or even bought for my own children. So this is really an important initiative that I also dedicated myself to as the coordinator of NEA's Read Across America. Can they see? She can't see me. I'm still trying to undo my video. Yeah, my video should be up. All right. If you guys can share my video, you can see me now? Okay, great. So this is why I dedicated myself to diverse books as coordinator of NEA's Read Across America, and now as a part of the Little Free Library family. So this is really, really important. And then also the whole issue of bringing books to high needs communities. Can you guys see me? So you can see me, but not the video. So we'd like to start right now by watching a short clip about reading color from our partners at Cal McVoy. And let's go ahead and get the video started.
It's been a time like no other. And despite it all, communities are coming together to make the world a better place. To create a more inclusive and equitable world, we must first be open to shifting our perspectives. That's why Little Free Library and Cal McVoy teamed up to bring stories from Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ authors to neighborhoods across the world with the Reading Color initiative. The initiative encourages everyone to read and share books about diverse cultures and backgrounds. Because a world where we can see each other, really see each other, is a better world for all who live here. Take a book, start a conversation, change our world.
Great. Well, this is really terrific. And we launched this summer and it was really, really wonderful. And what we wanted to do now is kind of share what has happened since the launch this summer. Following the launch of Reading Color in the Twin Cities, we've got some great statistics to share with you. Due to the generosity of the Sauer Family Foundation, we are able to grant 20 libraries, Little Free Libraries and Reading Color libraries in the Twin Cities. And so far, we've had more than 2,000 people take the Reading Color Pledge. And I really encourage you to do that. It's really important dedication to what we really love to do. We have 20 new Reading Color libraries installed in the Twin Cities, and we've shared 5,500 diverse books sourced from 7 local BIPOC owned and independent bookstores, as well as 7 publishing partners. And that's not a small thing. And in 2021, we're planning to take Reading Color nationwide, beginning with 6 new cities. And that's really exciting. I think we're really, really exciting. Twin Cities, yes, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So this is really exciting. And what kind of difference does it make? We'd like to share what a difference it makes. This is a nice little video from the launch from Monique Hernandez from Copy USA, where one of the first Little Free Library Reading Color libraries was placed in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Monique Hernandez, Development and Communications Manager at CAPI USA. CAPI is a nonprofit that provides resources to immigrants, refugees, and historically underserved communities in the Twin Cities. We have one location in Brooklyn Center and one on East Lake Street in South Minneapolis, and that's actually where our Little Free Library is housed. We got connected through Margaret Aldrich at Little Free Library, who I'm in a community choir with. Margaret reached out to see if CAPI would be interested in participating in the new Reading Color initiative. And anything to do with books excites me because I am an avid reader, but I'm especially excited about Reading Color because it gets diverse perspectives and voices out into the communities, especially after a year like we have experienced. It's more important now than ever. And I know the tiny shelves on our library are bare at present, so I can only imagine how much this is going to impact our neighborhoods in the future. So it's a wonderful program, and we are excited to be a part of it.
Great. Our thanks to Monique, because it really does make a difference, especially now when people are isolated and struggling to find them positive things. So to see books and to share books really kind of fill us all. What I'd like to do next is introduce our first guest. It is Dionne Sims, owner of Black Garnet Books in Minneapolis, the only Black-owned bookstore in the state of Minnesota, which is amazing, and why don't we have more? So Dionne's starting something here. We worked with Dionne to purchase books for the Reading Color launch, and her lovely and adorable photos right there for you. Welcome, Dionne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm just really happy to be able to support the Little Free Libraries and excited to get to talk to you all.
Great, great. Well, why don't we start with just tell us a little bit about Black Garnet Books, and then I'll get to our first question from Margaret.
Yeah, absolutely. So Black Garnet Books started the summer of 2020, about a month after the George Floyd protests. This bookstore was started as an answer to a need that I saw following the protests, just a need for highlighting Black voices, especially as everyone was trying to discover new ways to educate themselves. I really wanted to be able to support a Black-owned bookstore and discovered that the closest one was in Chicago. So truthfully, it just started from there, being like, this is something that the Twin Cities needs. And the support after that was just amazing. So yeah.
Great. And I just want to do a quick shout out to all of our stewards who, in the wake of what happened, really started sharing and uplifting both Black books, Black written books by authors, and just really shared with our community, made a huge, huge difference. And we do recognize what you've all done. So my first question for you is from Margaret. Have you gotten a lot of support from the reading community since starting Black Garnet Books?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that has just really been tremendous is seeing the ways that people recognize the importance not only for the books that Black Garnet specializes in, which is Black Indigenous authors, as well as people of color or authors of color, but also just the importance of the bookstore itself, having a Black-owned bookstore, and knowing that even though it's not the first one, it is the only one, and that says something a lot about where we're at, just as a community, and also where we're at in a larger sense with publishing. And I think that the reading community has really stepped up and said, you know, we see this importance. We know that there is something deeply important about representation, representation in books, representation in booksellers. And so it's truly just been amazing just to see the ways that people are recognizing that and being able to see it in a tangible way, whether it's actually buying the books or wanting to donate books, or, you know, donating to the GoFundMe that is allowing Black Garnet to move so quickly into opening up a permanent location. Yeah, the support really has just been amazing.
And we do know that this is a challenging time for you and for all booksellers. Anjali wants to know, how do you make your bookstore sustainable and also keep your framework of good literature?
Yeah, absolutely. So upon starting the bookstore, sustainability was actually something that was really important to me because, like I said, Black Garnet Books isn't the first Black-owned bookstore in the state of Minnesota. There have been other ones, but obviously they're no longer here. So going into this, a big question was, you know, what is it that has kept Black-owned bookstores from being sustainable fixtures in the community? And how do I make sure that this one becomes a sustainable fixture in the community? You know, and part of that has really come from trying to connect with people and trying to have a sense of community behind Black Garnet Books. So whether, and I mean, that's mostly been digital these days, right? Especially with COVID. But really being human with people online and trying to get people to see the really the foundation of this bookstore and what I am trying to do with my intentionality as I built it, just making sure everyone's in the loop every step of the way. You know, and for example, over the holiday season, we just got slammed with orders. And so I sent out this very human email where I was like, listen, here's what's going on. Here's what we've done so far. And got a lot of response. And I feel like that kind of thing really keeps people's trust and keeps people's belief in what you're doing. And so I think that that also helps the sustainability of the bookstore. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, but I'm really trying to make sure that people see this bookstore as a fixture and as something that's going to be here for a long time. And as far as making sure the framework of literature that I choose is, you know, has a good foundation as well, that really has to do with my belief that BIPOC voices are important, and that even though there hasn't been really a spotlight on them in the way that they deserve, and there really hasn't been a lot of support for them over the years, and we can see that in the numbers as far as, you know, how many Black authors exist, how many Black authors make it onto the New York Times list, so on and so forth. You know, that even though that support hasn't been there, that with this bookstore, I can shine a spotlight on good literature written by Black Indigenous people of color. I do only sell books that are by BIPOC authors. And I really do believe that that is something that this bookstore can stand on. And I really want to show publishing that people are excited about that, and it doesn't have to be a novelty. It can be something where people are like, oh, we absolutely expect to have this kind of expansive choice of BIPOC authors when we step into a bookstore. And I think that the success of Black Garnet Books so far is really just a testament to the power of the stories that BIPOC authors are telling, and also the power of the people and the readers who support them.
And that intentional part is also applicable for those of us who are book purchasers or book borrowers, and for those of us who read it. So that question of not only for going to a bookstore like Black Garnet, but going to other bookstores and libraries and asking for these books. I think that that's another really important thing. A lot of what you do as a bookseller really translates into what Little Free Library stewards and those who share the books is, again, that intentionality. And so you've got some great ways to engage readers and people who come by. So Taryn would love to know, what is the secret of selecting and displaying books that Little Free Library stewards can try to attract patrons? And what are some tips that you can provide even to continue that engagement? Like these BIPOC stories aren't just limited to a particular month. It's all year round, and ways in which you can really engage and promote and pull in maybe audiences that might not have had it before, but they're just scratching the surface of what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that for me, the secret of just, selecting these diverse books with, marginalized stories that deserve to be told is really just listening. It really has to do a lot with, I think one of the great ways that, I personally select and choose the books that I display for people is following authors of color online on social media. And that's kind of like a 2-for-1, where it's like, not only are you gaining access to an underrepresented eye in the publishing industry, but those authors are the ones that are like always sharing new books and new voices that they're excited about. And, they've constantly got these lists of things. And I mean, they're huge readers, And so I think that authors are so important when it comes to just deciding and choosing books, for me especially. I also really try and move towards books that might not necessarily tell a story that is currently in everyone's public eye, or something that's currently on everyone's mind, but then pushing that kind of towards the front, because even though something might not be currently popular, I do think that those stories are still foundational to the existence of being a person of color. And speaking as a Black woman, there's so many things that might not be super popular for people to discuss in the current moment, but are important to me just in my day-to-day. And I especially think that when we're talking about children's books, it's like, what do kids need to read that might not be all that interesting to us, and like trying to find those books and putting those to the front. And, it does take quite a bit of work and quite a bit of intentionality when it comes to searching for those books. Because like we said, they're not always pushed to the front when it comes to publishing and marketing campaigns. But being intentional in that way, I found really, it just really makes a difference.
I agree. I remember Ellen O from We Need Diverse Books would tell a story about being at a bookstore and a mother and a child, and the child reaching for a book that centered a Black character, and the mother saying, "Oh no, that's not for you," and Ellen going over and saying, "Actually, yes, it is. It is for you. It is for this child to see, you know, that notion of windows and mirrors. And that's all of what we can do in our conversations and in our book recommendations. And speaking of book recommendations, we have the Reading Color recommended list on our website. You'll be able to take a look at it after the seminar is over. And then there are others like the Brown Bookshelf, and We Need Diverse Books has a great one. So there's a great, and I would agree with Dionne that book authors, they promote each other. I mean, because it is a hard, it is a hard thing to do when you're struggling to get out there. And so they really do have a great invested interest in sharing the work of their colleagues. And I think that that's really terrific. And so that means as a bookseller, how do you address the lack of diversity in book publishing? What do you try to do?
Yeah, so I think when people think about the lack of diversity in book publishing, oftentimes they immediately go to, you know, authors. And that, of course, is super true. Like, we can't have diverse books without diverse authors to begin with. But I also think that having diverse booksellers is also really important. Because, you know, think about it. If you are walking into a bookstore, which I like to do quite often, and you're looking for someone to give you advice or to give you a little hint into what you might want to read, but say you're a Black woman and you walk into the bookstore and everyone is white, you know, not to say that people across races don't share similar interests in books, because obviously they do. But there is, of course, going to be, there's going to be a, like, not necessarily a barrier there, but it's a different life experience that we're talking about. And so I think that it's really important to have Black booksellers and to have booksellers of color. And so that's something that I feel really strongly about, is making sure that the people selling books, not just in my store, but in stores everywhere, are diverse, because that's how you get people recommending books that maybe wouldn't necessarily always be recommended. You know, if it was kind of like a birds of a feather thing where everyone's recommending the same books because they all kind of are in the same circles and watch the same things. You know, we need that diversity of thought and that diversity of experience, even in our bookstores, and especially in our bookstores. So I think that that's one way to address lack of diversity. And then also, I think for me as well with Black Garnet, the most obvious way that I address it is just by selling books by BIPOC authors. I think that there's something very, well, unfortunately, there's something very rebellious about that. There's something really rebellious about saying, you know, when you step into this bookstore, there's no books by white authors, because you can go into literally any other bookstore in the country and find books by white authors. And so here's one space where you come in here, and you know that no matter what book you pick up, it's going to be by someone who has a marginalized voice. It's going to be about an experience that isn't always pushed to the front of the line when it comes to like, you know, narrative or marketing or anything like that. And so that to me is really important, because I've never had that before. You know, I grew up very much struggling to find books that felt like they represented me, and to find people who were excited to show me books that represented me. So yeah, I think that those are two things that I'm just really excited to do. And hopefully people who do work in publishing and people who want to be in publishing see that, and see that it's a viable way to go about selling books.
Thank you so much, Dionne. And that same goes for the diversity in the publishing industry. And I think that that's another really, really important point. we're so pleased to have you here with us, Dionne. And we'll stop our questions for you right now, but we'll be able to have you come back at the very end to make a couple of extra points. And I'm so thrilled. Thank you very, very much. And we'll need to move on to our next presenter and panelist, and who will amplify, again, a lot of what you said. And this is also goes to the issue of LGBTQ stories too, of, other kinds of stories to be told, other kinds of authors. But this is really, really an important piece that we're now seeing. It's great to see authors like Tameka Fryer Brown. Tameka is a contributor to the Brown Bookshelf and also a member of Reading Color's Diverse Book Advisory Book. So welcome, Tameka. We're so pleased to have you join us.
Hey, thank you for having me here. Glad to be here.
And one thing for you, and I know Shelby's going to share this too, is if you want to learn more about Tameka and her books, you will go to tamekafryerbrown.com. And now that we've gotten to talk to Dionne from a bookseller point of view and a book reader, let's talk to you about the author from the author's perspective. Do you feel that the shift is happening in publishing to increase diversity in both authors and characters in their books? What's your sense of what's happening in publishing, and also what needs to happen still? What's important for us now? And that's from Anjali. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Anjali. I feel like there is a shift that is beginning to happen, right? Something that feels like it's more permanent this time than merely performative, right? We're seeing that the publishing industry is hiring more BIPOC people in positions of influence, like editors. There are more agencies that are hiring BIPOC agents, even book reviewers, right? We're having more BIPOC representation there. So all of that is important. We're even having some really frank and public discussions around equity and compensation, advances, and even in marketing dollars. So there is something that feels different to me this time around, which is good. And to the extent that it's happening, I give so much credit to the advocates and the creatives that are being very bold and courageous about bringing, these issues to the fore. So that's a good thing. I would say that there are some areas that we still need to work on in the industry, specifically around representation with own voices, right? The Cooperative Children's Book Center, they do a really good job of compiling statistical data each year about diversity in kid lit. And even as recent as the 2019 numbers, we see that, of course, there's a much smaller percentage than should be of BIPOC centered titles published each year. But even among the ones that are, there's an issue, particularly with titles, which, I guess the reasons why this happens can be debated in a totally separate setting, but Black books about Black characters, less than 50% of them are actually written by Black creatives. Wow. And for obvious reasons, that's problematic, because what it means is that Black people aren't controlling the narratives of the stories that are being told about them in kidlit, right? So that's an area where publishing, I think, needs to be a lot more aggressive in making change and progress.
And there's a good challenge too to follow up on your points, is that when that happens and when the stories aren't coming from the community very often, there's an easy shift into stereotypes. American Dirt, as popular as it is an example of, there's been a lot of controversy over that because of the voices that were shared. And, and that happens a lot. I think that one of the things that we have to do is also make sure that you know, we listen to people who are talking about these books, and I think that that's really good. For those of you out there, also raise your questions, challenge the publishers. The other thing is also to support young independent publishers. You know, it's not always the big publishers that have these books. The smaller publishers have been there for decades and for a very, very long time. Let's go to another question that's kind of like a follow-up to that one. How do you feel that both readers and writers can acknowledge privilege and advance inclusion in their works? You know, how, you know, that's a great challenge, and that's a great question from Jan.
Yeah.
What can writers and readers as well do for that?
Mm-hmm. That is a good question. I think that acknowledging privilege is a personal journey, right? And a personal responsibility that each of us has in acknowledging our privileges, plural, because we have many. And I think that the first step in that is for a person to make the decision, right? Yeah. That they want to figure out what their privileges are and what they mean for their lives and how they affect other people's lives and society at large. So that's the first step, to actually want to acknowledge your privilege. And then after that, it's a matter of being proactive about educating yourself. And there, I mean, there's lots of information out there where, you know, you can educate yourself about privilege and all types of related issues. So, and then the next step, once you learn something, you got to be willing to act on what you've learned to make change in your immediate world and greater society at large. So I think that part of it, the acknowledging privilege, is that personal responsibility journey. When it comes to advancing inclusion, there are some more specific things that I think we can do. As readers, we can buy and be very intentional about buying those own voices books. I always say that publishing speaks in the language of dollars, yeah, as most businesses do. So that's what readers can do. They can be intentional about buying those inclusive own voices titles so that publishing knows that there's a market for them. Thanks so much to Dionne for what she's doing to contribute to that effort, as well as initiatives like Read in Color, the Little Free Libraries Read in Color initiative. So that's what we as readers can do. We can support in that way. Authors, particularly white authors, or, you know, they can, as we're talking about this own voices matter, they can kind of step aside and let us tell our own stories. That's probably a little bit more challenging than it sounds, because as writers, a lot of times we just want to tell whatever story that comes to our mind, right? Mm-hmm. We just want to let the creativity flow. Yeah. But, you know, we also have responsibility. And if we say we want to advance inclusion in the industry, that necessitates us being also intentional about what we seek to have published. And if we want to change those buy about numbers that we were talking about and letting people of color, BIPOC people, control their own narrative, that necessitates white authors not trying to tell those narratives for us. And then they can also use their platforms. And we can also all use our platforms to promote others. BIPOC creatives, other historically marginalized voices based on, you know, identity or disability and those things. So that's something that we as authors can do. And of course, publishers, once again, can be so much more intentional and aggressive in making sure that they not only are publishing more apparently inclusive titles, but really inclusive titles by focusing on those own voices much more aggressively.
Yeah, and those of us, you know, who are in various communities too, you know, as writers too, we also have to make sure that we don't fall into the same stereotype stereotyping of others. And that's something that we have responsibility to do as well. And I think that's what's nice, is that we're hearing great voices from people who are looking at even the classics, but looking at our own writing and saying, you know, is part of this doing harm? It is, you know, it can be a great story, but it can also, you know, you just want to think about what is it? What am I trying to do with this character or whatever? Who am I centering? I think that's the thing about, you know, finding great books, is that we're becoming the center of a story, where kids find themselves in the center, or adults find themselves in the center of a good book, is really terrific. And we're not limited to the African American section or the Asian American section. Of, you know, we're all over the place, as our experiences show. So that was really terrific.
Exactly. Yeah. We need to be making sure that all of our kids are reading differently outside of what they experience on a day-to-day basis. All of them. Absolutely.
Well, that brings me to you. Are your fictional characters based on any characters in your own life, as you write and as you process and come up with the stories that you tell?
You know, I think that they all are, to a degree. I can't point to any particular character that I've written on a fictional basis and say, you know, this particular character was, you know, fashioned after this person in my life. But as authors, I think we always draw on our personal experiences, either from our childhood or our day-to-day life. And so to that extent, I would say yes. So yeah, my first book, Around Our Way on Neighbors Day, is about a really lively multicultural community. And I grew up in Miami, Florida, which is very diverse.
Very diverse, yeah.
Yes, and so that inspired that. Yeah, so you know, to that extent, I guess all of my writing is based on something true,
something
in my life.
And do you structure your writing day in a particular way? Do you have things that you do to kind of keep your writing going, or you know, is it organic? Does it evolve?
My writing days are very unstructured. I wish they were more structured. I think, you know, maybe once everybody's out of the house, except for my husband, he can stay. Maybe they'll become more structured. But right now, I write a lot by muse and deadline. And so, you know, sometimes, I mean, just a couple weeks ago, I stayed up for like 36 hours. Because I needed to get something done. So I just write by muse. And when I'm not writing, I might go days at a time and not write. But even then I'm thinking, I mean, I might be eating dinner and thinking about and working through a plot point or something. So, is that structured, unstructured? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, tell us about your latest book, Brown Baby Lullaby.
Yes, Brown Baby Lullaby. Okay, here it is, Brown Baby Lullaby. And this is a story that was inspired by my own children, my memories of them anyway. As they get older, my baby is 17 and my oldest is 24. And so, yeah, just as they get older, I just find myself having these real nostalgic periods where I'm just thinking about their babyhood. And it was during one of those periods that I thought to myself, you know what? I need to get this down. I need to capture these memories and these sensibilities. I mean, like I remember exactly how they smell after they come out of a bath. And I remember the feel of those soft, tiny baby feet. And I said, I need to get this down in book form, because I know I'm not the only one who has these memories. So that's what I did. And as I was writing it, I recognized that I wanted to make this a love letter, not just to my children, but, you know, to brown skinned babies everywhere, because they need loving on in this society. And so that's what I did. And when I saw the images, the beautiful images that AG4 did for the book, I knew that we had a book here that could be used to plant seeds, really important seeds in the hearts of our children. As mirror books, as you mentioned before, mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And we always thank Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop for that wonderful terminology that we can use. The book can be used to sow seeds in the hearts of Black and Brown children, seeds of self-love and self-esteem, but also in the hearts of non-Black and Brown children. It can sow seeds of inclusion and connectivity, so that when they all grow to be adults, we can have a much more connected and inclusive community, less biased, hopefully, and less racist than the ones that have come before it. So books like Brown Baby Lullaby, you know, that's why they're important to share with all of our children, because we're sowing seeds.
Yeah, it's really, you know, it's a great bridge to each other's communities, and our and you know, lived experiences are common, and to see more and more of our experiences in other communities, in other words, in other people's voices, we recognize ourselves. And I think that that's, if anything, you know, for us to learn from what just happened last week and keep moving forward to build a better and brighter future, not just for kids, but for ourselves. I think that that's really important. What I wanted to also say is, you know, I know that Shelby's, you know, dropping the link in for Tameka's website into the chat. Definitely learn more about her and explore the books. And we're also thrilled to announce that we are giving away a few copies of Brown Baby Lullaby to event attendees, and Lexi will be able to explain how to be eligible once we wrap up. So I want to thank you, Tameka. We're so appreciative to you as well. And I'm sure I'm going to see you around in bookstores.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so what I'd like to do now, we'd like to just, this is really exciting. I know we're running tight on time, and I just want to make sure that we're okay. I'd like to do a couple of things if you haven't. This is why this program is important. We want you to take part in it. And there are a few different ways you can support the Read in Color program simply by taking a pledge on the link at the chat. And, you know, one of the things that we're doing is donating little free library, Read in Color libraries to communities that need them, and increasing that access to diverse books. So if you would like to make a financial contribution, you can do so on our site. And also spread the word. We would love you to spread the word about this. We are very excited. We do want to bring this to other cities. We want to hear from you. We know that the questions about book lists, we've got book lists on the website as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of the questions that people will have post of this. And we want to share this video at some point so that you can educate others. We want your cities all over the country and even all over the world. I saw somebody from Bogota, Colombia there. This is a worldwide effort, and we're excited. So please do that, support it, and see what you can make happen. I think that's really exciting.
Thanks so much, Anita. And thank you again to Dionne and Tameka. It has been such a joy to have you all here with us today. For more information about Read in Color, as Anita mentioned, you can visit littlefreelibrary.org/readincolor. Shelby has shared those links in the chat. And as Anita mentioned, we are excited to give away 5 copies of Brown Baby Lullaby by Tameka Fryer Brown. So in a couple days, you'll get an email from us with a short survey. And then if you complete that quick survey for us to tell us what you thought about the event, you can be entered to win one of those 5 copies. We hope you'll join us again next month for Chapter 2 of Unbound, where we'll highlight the kindness and generosity we've seen among our Little Free Library stewards. And we're excited to share that we will be featuring our super steward, Heather Butts, as well as author Kate DiCamillo, and they'll be talking a little bit about generosity and sharing, and especially during the pandemic and all the amazing work we've seen from our stewards in the past year we've had. If you haven't already, we encourage you to follow Little Free Library on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to stay in touch. And you can hear more about future chapters of Little Free Library Unbound. And you can also get our e-newsletter. You can sign up for that on our site. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you next time.